August 21st, 1986, Lake Nyos, Cameroon. A small village sits at the edge of a volcanic crater lake. The water is deep, dark blue. Still, people have lived here for generations. They fish. They farm. They know this lake. That night something happens. Around 9 p.m. the lake begins to release gas, carbon dioxide, trapped for centuries in the water below. It comes up all at once, a massive cloud, heavier than air. It rolls down the valley like fog, silent, invisible, deadly. The gas flows through 3 villages, Nyos, Cam, Subum. It moves fast, 15 miles per hour, hugging the ground, filling every low place, every home, every room where people sleep. By morning, 1,746 people are dead. Most of them never woke up. They went to sleep and simply stopped breathing. Families in their beds, farmers in their fields, children beside their parents. The carbon dioxide displaced all the oxygen. You can't smell it, can't see it, can't taste it. One breath and you're unconscious. A few more and you're gone. The survivors tell strange stories. One man woke up 36 hours later. He'd been unconscious for a day and a half. When he opened his eyes, everyone around him was dead. Another woman heard a loud noise from the lake, a rumbling, then nothing. She passed out, woke up 6 hours later to silence. The animals died too. Cattle, dogs, birds, insects, anything that breathed. The landscape looked normal. The houses stood intact. No fire, no earthquake, no storm, just death. Everywhere. All at once. Scientists arrived within days. They'd never seen anything like it. A lake that kills. The water looked fine, clear, calm, but when they tested it, they found the answer. The lake sits in an old volcanic crater. Deep below, magma releases carbon dioxide. The gas dissolves into the water, builds up, concentrates. The lake becomes saturated, carbonated, like a giant bottle of soda. Something triggered the release. Maybe a landslide. Maybe cold rain hitting warm water. Maybe nothing at all, just the lake reaching its limit. The gas erupted. Not violently, no explosion, just a quiet exhalation. The lake breathed out, and everyone nearby stopped breathing. They call it a Limnic eruption, a lake overturn. It's rare. Only 2 other lakes in the world have this same deadly chemistry. Lake Monoun in Cameroon killed 37 people 2 years earlier. Lake Kivu sits between Rwanda and Congo. 2 million people live on its shores. It holds 300 times more gas than Nyos did. After the disaster, engineers installed pipes in Lake Nyos, degassing fountains. They bring water up from the deep. Let the gas escape slowly, safely. The fountains run constantly now, releasing what would otherwise build up again. But here's what stays with me. The silence. The way death came without warning, without sound. People went to sleep in a world that made sense. They knew their lake, they knew their land, they trusted the ground beneath them, and then the earth exhaled. This is the story of that night. What happened, why it happened, what it means to live on a planet that sometimes turns against us without warning, where the familiar becomes fatal, where sleep becomes permanent. We'll walk through the science, the geology, the chemistry of death, but also the human part, the village that disappeared, the survivors who woke to emptiness, the question that haunts everyone who studies this event. Could it happen again? The village had a name before that night, Nyos. It sat in the northwest region of Cameroon. High country, green hills, volcanic soil, good for farming. The people who lived there were mostly Fulani herders and farmers, maybe 1,200 people in Nyos itself, another few hundred in the nearby villages of Cam and Subum. They knew the lake. Everyone did. It was part of the landscape, part of daily life. You walked past it, fished in it sometimes, drew water from streams that fed from it. The lake was about a mile across, roughly circular. The water was deep, over 600 feet in some places. That's deeper than most lakes you'll ever see. The crater was old, maybe 400 years. Some volcanic event in the past had blown out a hole in the ground. Then water filled it. Rain, groundwater, springs. Over centuries it became a lake. Beautiful, calm, the kind of place that looks peaceful in photographs. People had lived near volcanic lakes for thousands of years, all over the world. Most of the time, nothing happens. The volcano is dead. The crater fills with water. Life goes on. You plant crops, raise children. The danger is theoretical, ancient, not something you think about when you're working in the fields or cooking dinner. The village had rhythms, patterns. Morning meant work, tending cattle, planting cassava and maize. The rainy season brought different tasks than the dry season. Evening meant gathering, talking, eating together, then sleep. The same cycle repeated, day after day, year after year. Houses were simple, mud brick, thatched roofs. Some had concrete walls. Most families slept together in 1 or 2 rooms, children on mats, parents on beds. The nights were quiet. No electricity in most homes, no street lights. When the sun went down, darkness came complete. August 21st started like any other day. Morning work, afternoon heat, evening meals. Nobody noticed anything unusual about the lake. It looked the same, acted the same. The water was still. The air was normal. There were no warnings, no signs, no reason to think tonight would be different from any other night. Some people remember hearing a rumbling sound around 9 p.m, a low noise from the direction of the lake, like distant thunder. But it wasn't the rainy season. Others heard nothing. They were already asleep, already deep in dreams, already vulnerable. The gas came out fast. Scientists later calculated the release happened over maybe 20 seconds. All that carbon dioxide, trapped in the deep water, held under pressure, suddenly free, it formed a cloud. Estimates put it at about 1.6 million tons of gas. That's an almost impossible amount to visualize. Imagine a wall of invisible death 160 feet high, rolling downhill at 15 miles per hour. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air. That matters. It doesn't rise and disperse. It flows. It follows the terrain. It pours down valleys like water, fills low places first, seeps into homes, settles into rooms, displaces the oxygen you need to breathe. The cloud moved through Nyos first, the village closest to the lake, then Cam, then Subum, following the valley, following gravity. It travelled about 15 miles total before it finally dispersed enough to become harmless. Most people never knew what was happening. You can't smell carbon dioxide, can't see it, can't taste it. One breath, and you're unconscious. Your brain needs oxygen. When it doesn't get any, it shuts down. Fast. No pain, no struggle, just sleep deepening into something permanent. Families died together, parents and children in the same room. Some people died outside, walking home, sitting by evening fires. One man died on his motorcycle. He'd been riding when the gas hit. The bike kept going for a bit, then crashed. They found him in the morning, still on the motorcycle, still wearing his helmet. The cattle died, thousands of them. The Fulani people depended on their herds. Cattle meant wealth, meant food, meant everything. The animals were in their pens, in the fields, breathing the same air as their owners. They went down just as fast. By morning, the landscape was scattered with dead cows, dead goats, dead chickens, dead dogs. Birds fell from the sky. Insects stopped moving. Anything that needed to breathe. anything that needed oxygen. The gas didn't discriminate, didn't choose, it just was. A physical fact. Carbon dioxide in high concentration, oxygen displaced, death following naturally. Some people survived, not many. Maybe 4,000 people lived in the affected area. About 1,746 died. The survivors were the ones who happened to be on high ground, the ones who were far enough from the valley floor. The gas flowed low. If you were uphill, you had a chance. One survivor woke up 36 hours later. He'd been unconscious for a day and a half. His body kept breathing somehow, kept his heart beating. When he finally opened his eyes, everyone around him was dead. His family, his neighbours. The silence must have been complete, total, the kind of quiet that feels wrong. Another woman described waking up after 6 hours. She'd heard the rumbling from the lake, then felt dizzy, then nothing. When she came to, she couldn't stand. Her body wouldn't work right. Carbon dioxide poisoning does that. Affects your muscles, your coordination. She crawled outside, saw the bodies, understood something terrible had happened but couldn't process what. The first outsiders arrived the next morning, a group of travellers passing through. They saw the cattle first, dead in the fields. Then they saw the people, in their homes, in the streets, everywhere. They drove to the nearest town with a phone, called for help. The government sent people, medical teams, soldiers. They didn't know what they were dealing with. Some kind of attack, a chemical weapon, a disease. The body showed no signs of violence, no wounds, no marks. People looked like they were sleeping, peaceful, just not breathing anymore. Scientists arrived from France, from the United States, from universities around the world. They'd heard about Lake Monoun, another volcanic lake in Cameroon. It had killed 37 people in 1984. 2 years earlier, same kind of death, same mystery. Now it happened again, bigger, deadlier. They needed to understand why. They tested the water, took samples from different depths, found the answer in the chemistry. The lake was saturated with carbon dioxide. The gas came from magma deep below, volcanic activity, not an eruption, just gas seeping up, dissolving into the water, building up, year after year, decade after decade. The lake became carbonated, like soda in a bottle, waiting for something to shake it. Nobody knows what triggered the release. Maybe a landslide, a chunk of the crater wall falling into the water, maybe cold rain hitting the warm surface, creating a temperature difference, causing the water to turn over. Maybe nothing dramatic. Maybe the lake just reached its limit. The water couldn't hold any more gas. It had to come out. The lake turned over. Deep water rose to the surface. Pressure dropped. The carbon dioxide came out of solution, all at once, like opening a shaken soda bottle. But instead of a small spray, this was a massive eruption, silent, invisible, deadly. The villagers were evacuated. The survivors moved to camps. Relief organizations came, brought food, medicine, counseling. But how do you counsel someone who lost everyone? How do you rebuild when your entire community is gone? Engineers studied the problem. They needed to prevent it from happening again. They designed a system, pipes running down into the deep water, bringing the gas up slowly, letting it escape safely. They installed the first fountain in 2001. The water shoots up, fizzes, releases carbon dioxide into the air where it disperses harmlessly. More fountains were added later. They run constantly now, degassing the lake, keeping the carbon dioxide levels down. The lake is safer, not completely safe, but safer. The villages were eventually resettled. People moved back, not everyone. Some couldn't face it. couldn't live next to the lake that killed their families. But others returned. It was home, the only home they knew. They farm the same land, tend new cattle, build new lives. But they remember. The survivors are older now, some have died. But the story lives on, the night the lake breathed out. The night's sleep became permanent for 1,746 people. The night a peaceful village learned that the earth beneath them was not as stable as they thought. This is what happened before that night. This is what was lost, not just lives, but a way of living, a trust in the familiar, a sense that the world made sense, that lakes were just lakes, that sleep was just sleep, that tomorrow would come. The village before was ordinary, beautiful in its ordinariness, people living, working, loving, raising children, making plans, thinking about harvest, about marriage, about the small concerns that fill human days. And then the earth exhaled, and everything changed, and the ordinary became impossible to return to. Even now, even with the fountains running, even with new families in old places, the knowledge remains. The lake is still there, still deep, still beautiful, still deadly if the fountains ever stop. There's something about these mysteries that works for sleep. They're big enough to be interesting, but distant enough not to worry about. History happened. We can't change it. We can only try to understand it. And sometimes understanding means just letting the questions wash over you, not solving them, just being with them. The lake is still there. The fountains still run. Life continues in Nyos. But we'll never forget what happened that August night. The evening started like any other evening in Nyos. Families ate together. Children played outside. Mothers washed dishes. Fathers sat and talked. The sun went down around 6:30. The air was warm, humid, normal for August in Cameroon. Joseph Nquain was a farmer. He lived in Subum, one of the villages near the lake. That night he went to bed around 9 p.m. His wife beside him, his children in the next room. He fell asleep easily. Hard work makes for good sleep. Around 9:30 something woke him. Not a sound, a feeling. He opened his eyes. The room felt strange, heavy. He tried to sit up, couldn't move. His arms wouldn't work. His legs felt like stone. He tried to call out to his wife. Nothing came. His mouth wouldn't form words. Then he passed out. In Nyos, Halima Suleiman was putting her children to bed. 3 kids, ages 4, 7, and 9. They'd had dinner, said prayers. Now it was time to sleep. She tucked them in, kissed their foreheads, walked to her own room. Her husband was already in bed, reading by lamplight. She climbed in beside him. They talked for a few minutes. Nothing important, just the small talk of married life, plans for tomorrow, what needed doing around the house. She doesn't remember falling asleep. One moment she was talking. The next moment was 36 hours later. The gas came from the lake. Scientists would figure that out later, but nobody in the villages knew about Limnic eruptions. Nobody knew that volcanic lakes can trap carbon dioxide in their depths. That pressure and temperature keep the gas dissolved in water. That sometimes, for reasons we still don't fully understand, that gas can all release at once. Lake Nyos had been holding carbon dioxide for years, maybe decades, maybe centuries. The lake sits in a volcanic crater. Deep underground, magma chambers still leak gas. That gas seeps up through cracks in the rock, dissolves into the water, sinks to the bottom because it's denser when dissolved. The bottom of Lake Nyos is cold, dark, under immense pressure from 600 feet of water above. Those conditions are perfect for trapping gas. The water can hold far more carbon dioxide than it normally would. It becomes supersaturated, like a soda bottle that's been shaken but not opened yet. Something triggered the release that night. We're not sure what. Maybe a landslide, maybe a small earthquake, maybe just the natural overturn of water layers. The lake had reached a tipping point. Too much gas, too little stability. When it started, it happened fast. The gas came up from the bottom, rose through the water, hit the surface, began pouring out into the air, not slowly, not gradually, all at once. A massive eruption of carbon dioxide. Witnesses who survived described a loud rumbling. Some said it sounded like an explosion. Others said it was more like thunder. The lake churned. White foam appeared on the surface. The water level dropped by about 3 feet. That's how much gas came out, enough to displace 3 feet of water across a lake a mile wide. The gas cloud was enormous. Scientists estimate it was about 300 feet high, nearly 10 miles long. It contained somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide. That's hard to picture. Think of it this way. If you filled a football stadium with pure carbon dioxide, you'd need to fill it about 50 times to match what came out of Lake Nyos that night. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air, about 1.5 times as heavy. So it doesn't rise and disperse. It flows downhill, follows valleys, fills low places. It moves like water, like a flood, but invisible, silent, odorless. The cloud rolled down from the lake at about 12 miles per hour, fast enough that you couldn't outrun it if you tried. But most people didn't know to run. They couldn't see it coming, couldn't smell it, couldn't hear it. By the time they felt anything wrong, it was too late. Carbon dioxide kills by displacement. It pushes oxygen out of the air. When the concentration gets above 10%, you lose consciousness in minutes. Above 30%, you're unconscious in seconds. The cloud from Lake Nyos was probably 30% to 50% carbon dioxide in places, maybe higher right near the lake. Your body needs oxygen, your brain especially. Cut off the oxygen supply and your brain shuts down fast. No pain, no warning, you just pass out. If the exposure continues, you stop breathing. Your heart stops. You die. Most of the victims at Nyos never knew what was happening. In Nyos village, people were in their homes. Doors closed, windows shut against the night. The gas flowed through the streets, seeped under doors, came through cracks around windows, filled every enclosed space, bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens. It settled to the floor first, then rose. In minutes, the air in those homes was unbreathable. Families died together, parents and children in the same rooms. Some people were found in bed, others on the floor. A few made it to their doors, tried to get out, collapsed in doorways. The gas didn't care. It just kept flowing, kept filling, kept displacing oxygen. Animals died too. Cattle in fields, dogs in yards, birds fell from trees, insects stopped moving, anything that breathed was vulnerable. Later people would find thousands of dead animals, cows lying in pastures, chickens scattered around coops. The silence must have been complete. No birds singing, no insects buzzing, nothing alive making sound. The gas cloud travelled for 15 miles. It followed the valley down from the lake, passed through Nyos first, then Cam, then Subum. Each village lost people. Nyos was hit worst because it was closest, but Cam and Subum weren't spared. The cloud just kept moving, thinning out as it went, mixing with air, but still deadly for miles. Some people survived because of luck. Small things that made the difference. A house on a hill instead of in the valley. A window left open that let the gas pass through instead of pooling, being awake and outside when it happened, feeling the first effects and running uphill before losing consciousness. Joseph Nquain survived. He woke up 36 hours later. his wife dead beside him, his children dead in the next room. He was weak, confused, his lungs burned, his head pounded, but he was alive. He staggered outside, found his neighbours dead, his livestock dead, the village silent. He walked, found others, a few survivors, maybe 6 people from Subum. They didn't understand what had happened. Some thought it was a bomb, others thought evil spirits. Nobody had the right framework to understand. How could they? Nothing like this had ever happened in living memory. Halima Suleiman woke up too, later than Joseph, almost 2 days after the gas came. Her husband was dead, her children were dead. She was alone in a house full of bodies. She screamed. Nobody came. She ran outside, found more bodies, neighbours, friends, people she'd known her whole life. She walked to the road, found a truck, the driver dead at the wheel. She kept walking, eventually found other survivors. They gathered together, tried to make sense of it. Couldn't. The world had ended and they didn't know why. The first outsiders arrived on August 22nd, a Friday, the day after the eruption. They were health workers from a nearby town. They'd heard rumours, something wrong at Nyos. They drove out to check. What they found was beyond comprehension. Bodies everywhere, in homes, in streets, in fields. No signs of violence, no blood, no wounds, just death. Thousands of people and animals, all dead, all within a small area. The health workers didn't stay long. They radioed for help, reported what they'd seen, then got out. The smell was already terrible. Bodies decompose fast in tropical heat. Government officials arrived next, then journalists, then scientists, everyone trying to understand. The theories started immediately. A chemical weapon, a poison gas attack, a volcanic eruption, a curse. Nobody had the right answer at first. The truth emerged slowly. Scientists tested the air, found high levels of carbon dioxide still present in low areas, tested the lake water, found it depleted of gas in the upper layers, interviewed survivors, heard about the rumbling, the white foam, the smell of rotten eggs, some reported. The pieces came together. This was a Limnic eruption, a rare natural disaster. Only 2 other cases were known. Lake Monoun in Cameroon had killed 37 people in 1984. Lake Kivu in Rwanda showed signs of similar gas buildup. But nobody had seen anything on the scale of Nyos. The lake itself looked different after. The water had changed colour, from deep blue to reddish brown. Iron from deep water had been brought to the surface, oxidized in the air, turned the lake rust-coloured. It would stay that way for weeks, a visible sign that something had come up from below. The villages were evacuated, the survivors relocated, the bodies buried in mass graves. There were too many for individual funerals, too many for the living to handle. Soldiers came in with trucks, loaded bodies, drove them to burial sites. It took days. The smell hung over everything, the horror of it, the scale. Scientists set up monitoring equipment. They wanted to understand, wanted to prevent it from happening again. They measured gas levels in the lake, found that carbon dioxide was still building up. The underground source hadn't stopped. The lake would eventually fill with gas again. Another eruption was possible. The solution took years to implement. French scientists designed a system, a pipe that reaches to the bottom of the lake. It brings deep water to the surface, lets the gas escape slowly, safely. The water fountains up. Looks like a geyser, but it's actually degassing, releasing pressure, preventing another catastrophic eruption. 3 pipes now operate in Lake Nyos. They run constantly, bringing up gas, keeping the lake safe. The water is blue again. The villages are still abandoned, but people live near the lake now. They trust the pipes, trust the monitoring, trust that it won't happen again. Joseph and Quay never went back. He moved to another region, started over, but he never forgot that night. The feeling of paralysis, the confusion, waking up to find everyone dead. He told his story to journalists, to scientists, to anyone who asked. He wanted people to know, wanted them to understand what it was like. Halima Suleiman stayed closer. She remarried, had more children, but she visits the graves sometimes, the mass burial sites where her first family lies. She brings flowers, says prayers, tries to make peace with what happened. Some days are easier than others. The death toll was 1,746 people, plus over 3,500 cattle, plus countless other animals, all in one night. All from a natural disaster most people had never heard of. The villagers lost entire generations, families were wiped out, bloodlines ended, the social fabric torn beyond repair. Cameroon remembers. August 21st is a day of mourning. Schools teach about it, scientists study it, engineers work to prevent it. The pipes keep running, the lake keeps releasing gas, slowly, safely, the way it should have all along. Other volcanic lakes are being checked now. Lake Kivu, Lake Monoun, any deep crater lake near volcanic activity, looking for the same conditions, the same deadly build-up. The goal is to never let it happen again, to catch the danger before it becomes disaster. But we can't check every lake, can't monitor every crater. Nature is vast, our resources limited. Somewhere there might be another Lake Nyos, another community living beside a ticking time bomb, not knowing, not suspecting, just living their lives, going to sleep at night, trusting that morning will come. That's the thing about natural disasters. They're random, impersonal. The earth doesn't care about our plans, our communities, our lives. It just operates according to physics. Gas builds up, pressure increases, eventually something gives, the release comes, and if people are in the way, they die. Not because they did anything wrong, not because they deserved it, just because they were there when it happened. The survivors carry it with them, that knowledge, that randomness. They were spared by chance, by small factors they couldn't control, a few feet of elevation, a crack in a wall, being awake at the right moment. Nothing they earned, nothing they chose, just luck. And everyone else had the opposite luck. The wrong house, the wrong room, the wrong moment to be asleep. The morning after was worse than the night itself. At least during the night nobody knew. Nobody understood. They just stopped breathing, stopped living. But morning brought awareness, brought discovery, brought the full weight of what had happened. The first light came around 6 a.m. Grey dawn over the hills. Birds should have been singing. They weren't. No sound at all, no roosters crowing, no cattle lowing, no voices calling good morning, just silence, complete and absolute. The survivors who woke first thought they'd gone deaf. That's what several of them reported later. They opened their eyes, sat up, called out, heard their own voices but nothing else. No response, no ambient noise, no life sounds, just their own breathing in dead air. Samuel Barr woke in Calm Village around 6:30. He'd survived because his house sat on a small rise. The gas had mostly flowed past. He felt sick, dizzy. His head pounded like someone was hitting it with a hammer, but he was alive. He called for his wife. No answer. He called again. Nothing. He got up, stumbled to the next room, found her on the floor, not breathing. He shook her, tried to wake her. She was cold, already stiff. He backed away, didn't understand. Ran outside, saw his neighbour's house. The door, open. He went inside, found the whole family, parents, 3 children, all dead, all in their beds. He ran to the next house, same thing, the next house, same. Every house he checked, every person he found, dead. He started screaming. Nobody came. Nobody answered. He was alone in a village of corpses. Other survivors had similar experiences. They woke up, found death everywhere, couldn't process it. The human mind isn't built for this kind of discovery. We understand death in small doses. One person, maybe a few, but hundreds, thousands, all at once. The brain can't hold it. Martha Taku woke in Nyos around 7 a.m. She was 16 years old. She'd survived because she'd been sleeping in a storage shed, high up, away from the main house. The gas hadn't reached her in full concentration. She felt terrible, weak, nauseous. But she got up. She walked to her family's house, found her parents dead in their bed, her younger brother on the floor, her baby sister in her crib. All gone. She didn't scream, didn't cry, just stood there, staring. Her mind went blank. Protective shock. The body's way of handling the impossible. She walked outside, saw bodies in the street, neighbours she'd known her whole life, the shopkeeper, the teacher, the old woman who sold vegetables, all lying where they'd fallen. Some were in doorways. They'd tried to get out, felt something wrong, tried to escape, didn't make it. The cattle were everywhere, big animals, strong. They died just as easily as people. They lay in fields, in yards. Some had fallen while walking. You could see their last steps, a trail leading to where they dropped. Others were in groups, herds that had been together. All down now, all still. Dogs lay beside their owners, chickens scattered around coops. Even the insects were dead. Flies, beetles, anything that breathed. The gas had killed it all. The only things moving were the wind and the trees. Everything else had stopped. The smell started early. Bodies decompose fast in tropical heat. By mid-morning the odour was spreading, sweet and sick. The smell of death multiplied by thousands. It hung in the air, clung to everything. Survivors wrapped cloth around their faces. Didn't help much. The smell got through. Some survivors tried to help, checked bodies, looking for anyone alive, found a few, very few, maybe 20 people total from all 3 villages, out of nearly 2,000. The odds were terrible. If you were in the gas cloud's path, you almost certainly died. If you were outside that path, you lived. Not much middle ground. The survivors who could walk started moving toward the main road. They didn't know what else to do, couldn't stay in the villages. Too many dead, too much horror. They walked slowly, still weak from the gas, still dizzy, still not understanding what had happened. A truck came through around 10 a.m., a driver from a nearby town. He was heading to Nyos to deliver supplies. He saw people walking on the road, stopped to ask what was wrong. They tried to explain, couldn't find the words, just pointed back toward the villages, said everyone was dead. He didn't believe them at first, thought they were confused. Maybe there'd been an accident, a few deaths. He drove toward Nyos, got close, started seeing bodies, cattle first, then people. He stopped the truck, got out, walked a bit further, saw more bodies, more and more. He turned around, drove back fast, went to get help. The first officials arrived around 2 p.m. local police, a medical officer. They came prepared for maybe a dozen deaths, some kind of local incident. What they found broke their preparation. Bodies everywhere they looked. No signs of violence, no wounds, no blood, just death. Mass death. Inexplicable death. They tried to count, gave up quickly. Too many, too spread out. They took photographs, made notes, called for more help. This was beyond local capacity, beyond anything they'd ever seen. They needed experts, scientists, the military, someone who could make sense of it. The news spread slowly. Remember, This was 1986. No internet, no cell phones, no instant communication. Word travelled by radio, by telephone, by people driving to the next town and telling someone. By evening, regional officials knew. By the next day, the capital knew. By the third day, the world knew. Journalists arrived before scientists. They always do. Cameras and notebooks, looking for the story. They interviewed survivors, photographed bodies, sent reports back to their papers, their TV stations. The images shocked the world. Peaceful-looking people lying in their beds. No visible cause of death. Just gone. Theories started immediately. People needed explanations, needed something to make sense of it. Some said it was a chemical weapon, a test gone wrong, a leak from some secret facility. But there were no facilities nearby, no military bases, no chemical plants, just villages and farmland. Others said terrorism, a gas attack. Someone had targeted these villages, but why? They were remote, poor, no strategic value, no political importance. And how would terrorists deploy gas that precisely? That effectively? It didn't add up. Some locals believed in curses, evil spirits. The lake was sacred to some groups. Maybe someone had angered it. Maybe this was punishment. Scientists dismissed this, but the locals knew their land, knew their history. They'd heard stories about the lake, about strange things happening. Maybe those stories had truth in them. The scientific explanation came within days. A team from Cameroon, another from France. They tested everything: air, water, soil, bodies. They found carbon dioxide, high levels, in the air near ground level, in the lungs of victims, in the lake water. The pieces fit together. This was a limnic eruption, a natural phenomenon, rare but documented. Lake Monoun had done something similar 2 years earlier, killed 37 people. But nobody had connected the dots. Nobody had predicted Nyos could do the same thing, on a much larger scale. The lake had released its stored gas, all at once, created a massive cloud. That cloud had flowed downhill, displaced oxygen, killed everything that breathed. Simple physics, terrible results, no malice, no intention, just nature operating according to its laws. Understanding didn't make it easier. Knowing why didn't bring anyone back. The survivors still had to bury their families, still had to leave their homes, still had to figure out how to keep living. Knowledge helps, but it doesn't heal. The burial teams arrived on August 23rd. Soldiers mostly. They had protective gear, masks, gloves. They needed them. The bodies had been lying in the heat for 2 days. Decomposition was advanced. The smell was overwhelming. The sight worse. They dug mass graves. Had to. No time for individual burials, no resources, no way to identify everyone. They loaded bodies onto trucks, drove them to burial sites, laid them in rows, covered them with earth, marked the locations, said prayers, moved on to the next load. It took a week to bury everyone, a week of gruesome work. Soldiers who did it had nightmares for years. Some quit the military afterward. Couldn't handle what they'd seen. The scale of death. The randomness. Families buried together. Whole bloodlines ended. Communities erased. The villages were evacuated. The few survivors relocated. The government declared the area dangerous. Set up exclusion zones. Nobody could live near the lake until they understood it better. Until they could prevent it from happening again. That took years. Scientists kept studying. They measured gas levels, found the lake was still dangerous, still building up carbon dioxide. Another eruption was possible, maybe likely. They needed a solution, a way to release the gas safely before it built up again. The French team designed a system, a pipe reaching to the lake bottom. It would bring deep water to the surface. Let the gas escape slowly, controlled degassing. The water would fountain up, look dramatic, but it would be saving lives, preventing another disaster. The first pipe was installed in 2001, 15 years after the eruption. It worked. Water shot up 150 feet into the air. Gas bubbled out constantly. The lake level stabilized. Measurements showed the deep water was losing its carbon dioxide, slowly but surely. 2 more pipes were added later. More capacity, more safety. Now the lake releases gas constantly, a little bit every day, instead of all at once every few decades. The danger is managed, not eliminated, but managed. People live near Lake Nyos again, not in the same villages. Those are still abandoned, but in the area, they trust the pipes, trust the monitoring, trust that scientists understand what happened, that it won't happen again. Most days that trust feels justified, but the lake is still there, still deep, still volcanic, still connected to magma chambers below. The gas still seeps up, still dissolves in the water. The pipes handle it now, but pipes can fail. Equipment breaks, maintenance gets delayed. The lake is patient, the danger remains. The morning after taught us something about how quickly normal becomes nightmare, about how fragile our safety is, about how nature doesn't care about our plans, our communities, our lives. It just operates. We're the ones who have to adapt, to understand, to protect ourselves. Those survivors carry that morning with them. The silence, the discovery, the incomprehensible scale of loss. They're older now. Some have passed away. But while they lived, they remembered. They told their stories, made sure the world knew, made sure we learned. Because somewhere there might be another Lake Nyos, another community living beside danger they don't understand, another morning waiting to arrive. And if we've learned anything, if all those deaths meant anything, it's that we need to look, need to check, need to prevent. Before another village goes to sleep and never wakes up, carbon dioxide is invisible. That's the first thing you need to understand. You can't see it, can't smell it, can't taste it. It's just there, or not there. And when there's too much of it, you die. We breathe it out every second. Your body makes it, burns sugar and oxygen, produces carbon dioxide as waste. Then you exhale, get rid of it, bring in fresh oxygen. The cycle continues. Your whole life, every breath. Normal air is about 0.04% carbon dioxide. That's 0.04%. Tiny amount. Your body handles it fine. But when that number goes up, things change fast. At 1% concentration, you might feel a bit off. Drowsy maybe. Slight headache. Nothing serious. You'd barely notice. At 3%, your breathing gets faster. Your body knows something's wrong. It's trying to compensate, get more oxygen in, push more carbon dioxide out. Your heart rate increases. You might feel anxious, confused. At 5%, you're in trouble. Real trouble. Your breathing becomes laboured, painful even. You can't think straight, can't coordinate movements. Panic sets in, but panic doesn't help, can't help. At 10%, you lose consciousness within minutes. Your brain shuts down, stops sending signals. Your muscles stop responding. You collapse wherever you're standing. At 30%, you're dead. No chance, no recovery. Your brain cells die from lack of oxygen. Your heart stops. Everything stops. The gas cloud from Lake Nyos was somewhere between 10% and 30% carbon dioxide. Probably varied in different areas, thicker in some places, thinner in others, but everywhere it went the concentration was deadly. Think about what that means physically. Air is mostly nitrogen and oxygen, about 78% nitrogen, about 21% oxygen, the rest is trace gases. When carbon dioxide floods in, it pushes the oxygen out, displaces it, takes its place. Your lungs still work, still expand and contract, but they're pulling in carbon dioxide instead of oxygen. Your blood still circulates, but it's not carrying what your cells need. They're starving, dying, and you can't do anything about it. The people in Nyos didn't suffocate in the way we usually think of suffocation. Nobody was strangling them. Nothing blocked their airways. They could breathe freely. They just weren't breathing anything useful. Here's what probably happened in those final moments. The gas rolled in. Heavier than air, it stayed low. Filled the rooms from the bottom up. Most people were sleeping, lying down, right in the path of the thickest concentration. First breath of high concentration carbon dioxide, your body reacts, tries to breathe faster, wake you up, but you're asleep. Your conscious mind isn't engaged. Your body's automatic responses kick in. They're not enough. Your blood oxygen drops rapidly. Your brain needs constant oxygen, uses about 20% of your body's supply. When that supply cuts off, you've got maybe 15 seconds of consciousness. Then nothing. Some people woke up. We know because some tried to move, got to doorways, made it outside. But waking up didn't save them. The gas was everywhere. Outside was just as deadly as inside. Your brain goes first. Higher functions shut down. Reasoning, memory, speech. Then motor control. You can't move even if you want to. Then the automatic functions. Breathing, heartbeat. Everything stops. Death came in waves through those villages. The gas moved fast but not instantly. It flowed downhill, followed the terrain. Some areas got hit first. Others had a few more minutes. Not that it mattered much. The cattle died the same way. Big animals with big lungs. Didn't help. They needed oxygen just like humans. When the air turned poison, size didn't matter. Strength didn't matter. They went down just as fast. Dogs have better smell than humans. They probably detected something wrong, maybe barked, maybe tried to alert their owners, didn't save them, can't smell carbon dioxide. It's odorless. Whatever they sensed, it was too late. Even insects died. Flies, beetles, mosquitoes, anything that needed oxygen. The gas killed them all. That's how thorough it was, how complete. Nothing that breathed survived in the cloud's path. The survivors lived because of geography. Pure luck. They happened to be in places the gas didn't reach, higher ground mostly, or areas where the terrain diverted the flow. A few feet of elevation made the difference between life and death. Joseph and Quain survived because his house sat on a small rise, maybe 10 feet higher than his neighbours. The gas flowed past. He got a dose, enough to knock him out, but not enough to kill. When the cloud moved on, fresh air returned. He woke up. His neighbours didn't. Scientists studied this afterward, mapped the gas flow, tried to understand the physics. The cloud moved downhill at about 15 miles per hour. That's a fast walk, faster than most people can run uphill, especially when you're confused, oxygen deprived, disoriented. The gas stayed low, hugged the ground, filled valleys, followed stream beds, avoided hills. Basic physics. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air, about 1.5 times heavier. So it sinks, settles, pools in low places. The cloud was cold too. The gas came from deep water, water that's near freezing. When it reached the surface, it was maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold gas is denser than warm gas, heavier, sinks even more. Witnesses who survived saw a strange mist, not thick fog, more like a shimmer, a distortion in the air. The cold carbon dioxide mixing with warm humid air created condensation. Water droplets. That's what they saw. The gas itself remained invisible. The cloud made sounds. Some survivors reported hearing a rumbling, a rushing noise, like wind through trees. But there was no wind, just gas moving, displacing air, creating pressure waves, the sound of death approaching. How long did it last? The killing probably took 10 to 15 minutes. That's how long the thickest part of the cloud took to pass through. After that, the gas dispersed, mixed with normal air, diluted, became less deadly. But those 10 to 15 minutes were enough. If you were in the path, you died. If you weren't, you lived. Simple as that. No middle ground. No partial exposure that you could recover from. The dose was either fatal or it wasn't. The gas didn't just kill and vanish though, it lingered. Carbon dioxide is stable, doesn't break down, doesn't react with much. It just sits there until wind disperses it or plants absorb it. In the valleys around Nyos, it took hours to fully clear. Rescue workers who arrived the next day had to be careful, test the air, make sure it was safe. Some areas still had dangerous concentrations. Pockets of gas trapped in buildings, in low spots. They had to ventilate everything before entering. The bodies told the story. Medical examiners found no injuries, no signs of violence, no disease, just death. The only clue was in the blood. Oxygen levels near zero, carbon dioxide levels through the roof, the chemistry of asphyxiation. But here's what's strange. Most victims looked peaceful. They died in their sleep, never knew what was happening. Their faces were calm, relaxed. No expressions of pain or fear. They just stopped breathing and never woke up. Compare that to other kinds of death. Drowning victims show signs of struggle, panic. Poisoning victims often convulse, suffer, show distress. But carbon dioxide in high concentrations knocks you out fast, before you can panic, before you can suffer. Is that a mercy? Maybe. The people of Nyos didn't experience terror, didn't watch death coming, didn't say goodbye. They went to sleep, just didn't wake up. Their families ended in silence, in darkness, without warning. The science explains how, but it doesn't explain the scale. Why so many? Because the lake released so much gas. Estimates say between 100,000 and 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide. All at once. That's an enormous amount. To put it in perspective, humans worldwide produce about 35 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year, from all sources, cars, factories, power plants, everything. This one lake, in one night, released what humanity produces in about 15 minutes, but concentrated in one small area. The cloud was dense, thick with gas. If you could have seen it, it would have looked like a wall of fog, rolling down the valleys, filling every space, pushing air out, replacing life with death. The physics are straightforward. The results were catastrophic. Carbon dioxide doesn't need to be exotic to be deadly. It's not a rare poison, not a chemical weapon, just a common gas in an uncommon concentration. We live with carbon dioxide every day. It's in the air, in our drinks, in our bodies. We don't fear it because we don't think about it. But Lake Nyos taught us something. Taught us that even familiar things can kill. Even invisible things can be deadly. The survivors who woke up in that gas cloud. The ones who got just enough to knock them out but not kill them. They described feeling heavy, like the air itself had weight, like they were underwater, breathing but not breathing, conscious but not conscious. That's what carbon dioxide does at sublethal doses. It makes you feel drunk, confused. Your thoughts slow down. Your movements become uncoordinated. You might know something's wrong, but you can't figure out what, can't respond appropriately. Some survivors tried to help others, tried to wake family members, shake them, call their names, but they were too weak, too disoriented. They collapsed before they could save anyone, woke up hours later, found everyone dead. The guilt some survivors felt, thinking they should have done more, should have saved someone, but there was nothing they could have done. The gas was too strong, too fast, too complete. Survival was luck, not strength, not quick thinking, just luck. Scientists now understand limnic eruptions better because of Nyos. They've studied the physics, the chemistry, the geology. They know how carbon dioxide accumulates in deep lakes, how it gets released, how it behaves once it's free. But understanding doesn't make it less deadly. The gas still kills the same way, displaces oxygen, stops breathing, ends life. Knowledge helps us prevent it, predict it. But the mechanism remains simple, terrifyingly simple. Carbon dioxide is still invisible, still odorless, still deadly in high concentrations. The only difference now is we watch for it. Monitor lakes, install warning systems, degassing pipes. We've learned to respect what we can't see. The people of Nyos didn't have that knowledge, didn't have those warnings. They lived beside a lake they trusted, a lake that seemed safe, until one night it wasn't. And by the time they knew something was wrong, it was already too late. That's the horror of it. Not the gas itself, but the silence of it, the invisibility, the way it killed without warning, without mercy, without discrimination. Young and old, strong and weak. Everyone who breathed died. Everyone who didn't breathe that air lived. The science is cold, clinical. It explains exactly what happened, how the molecules moved, how the chemistry worked, how the physics played out. But it doesn't capture the human cost. The families ended, the community destroyed, the survivors left behind. Understanding how carbon dioxide kills doesn't make the deaths easier to accept. It just makes them more real, more concrete, more preventable. And that might be the hardest part. Knowing that invisible gas, that common compound, that simple molecule, killed 1,746 people in one night. Let's step back for a minute and look at the science behind what happened that night. Not just what carbon dioxide does to the body, but why it works so quickly, so silently, and so completely. Why didn't anyone have a chance to run? Why did so many people die without even waking up? There's more to this than just a cloud of bad air. The way carbon dioxide kills is different from almost anything else. It's not like drowning, not like fire or poison. It follows its own set of rules. Rules most of us never even think about. Here's the thing. Carbon dioxide is everywhere, but it's usually harmless. Plants need it to grow. We breathe it out with every breath. But in high doses, it turns deadly. And it does so in a way that tricks the body at every level. The way it works is almost like a trap. You don't see it coming. Your body doesn't warn you until it's too late. Most of the time, when your body senses danger, it's because of something obvious. Smoke, for example, irritates your eyes and nose. It smells bad. Fire burns. Toxins make you sick. Even a lack of oxygen, like at high altitudes, gives warning signs. Your head hurts. You feel dizzy. But carbon dioxide is a different story. It doesn't give off any signals you can notice in time. It's invisible, silent, and acts fast. The gas sneaks in and does its work before your brain can sound the alarm. So why does this happen? It goes back to how humans evolved. Our bodies are designed to notice when we don't have enough oxygen, but they're even more sensitive to rising carbon dioxide. Here's why. When you hold your breath, the first thing that makes you uncomfortable isn't low oxygen. It's the extra carbon dioxide building up in your blood. That's what triggers the urge to breathe. Not the lack of oxygen, but the build-up of carbon dioxide. Your blood is always carrying both gases, oxygen to feed your cells, carbon dioxide as waste from burning energy. Normally your lungs get rid of the carbon dioxide and bring in new oxygen with every breath. The levels stay balanced. But if you breathe in air with too much carbon dioxide, that balance breaks down quickly. Think about a campfire in a closed room. If the fire burns up all the oxygen, you'll eventually start gasping for air. But if carbon dioxide builds up at the same time, your urge to breathe becomes overwhelming. Your body starts to panic. But with enough carbon dioxide, your brain just shuts off. There's no panic, no struggle, just a sudden, deep sleep that you never wake from. What's strange is how carbon dioxide fools the body's warning systems. At first, it triggers the urge to breathe faster, but in very high concentrations, it actually depresses the brain's control over breathing. The part of your brain that makes you breathe every few seconds, called the brainstem, gets overwhelmed. It just stops working. That's why people in Nyos didn't thrash around or try to escape. Their bodies never got the message. Another piece of the puzzle is how the gas moved. Carbon dioxide is heavier than the air we normally breathe. That means it flows downhill, hugs the ground, and pools in low places. But it's not just about weight, it's also about temperature. The gas that night was cold, coming up from the deep lake. Cold gases are denser, so they move even lower and spread out along the ground. Anyone lying down was in the thickest, deadliest part. Let's talk about how this compares to other invisible killers. For example, carbon monoxide is a famous silent killer. It also has no smell or colour. It kills by blocking the blood's ability to carry oxygen. But carbon monoxide poisoning takes a while. You get headaches, feel sick, and might have a chance to escape if you notice early. Carbon dioxide is different. It doesn't block oxygen in the blood. It simply pushes oxygen out of the air. If you're surrounded by carbon dioxide, it fills your lungs. There's no oxygen left to pick up. Your blood carries less and less oxygen with every breath. Brain cells start dying almost right away. The switch from awake to unconscious is quick. That's why Nyos was so deadly. People didn't even have time to know they were in danger. You might wonder if it's possible to build up a tolerance to carbon dioxide. The answer is no. Even people who work in environments with a bit more carbon dioxide, like miners or people who work in greenhouses, can't handle much more than normal. Once the concentration hits a certain level, the body can't adapt. It's not something you can get used to. Let's look at some numbers. Normal air has about 0.04% carbon dioxide. At 1%, people might feel sleepy. At 3%, they start to feel breathless and confused. At 5%, most people can't function well. At 10%, people lose consciousness in minutes. And above 20%, death comes almost instantly. The gas from Lake Nyos was likely between 10% and 30% in the worst spots. That's not survivable. Here's another important aspect: the way carbon dioxide interacts with the body's chemistry. When you breathe it in, the gas dissolves into your blood. It makes the blood more acidic. This acidity affects everything: your muscles, your nerves, your brain. The signals in your brain start to fail. Your heart can't beat properly. Your muscles won't work right. It's like the whole system falls apart at once. Now, let's think about why people didn't wake up. Normally, if you're suffocating, your body tries to wake you. You gasp, you sit up, you try to get out. But with carbon dioxide, especially at night, the process is different. The gas makes you sleepy even before it knocks you out. You might wake up just enough to feel confused. Maybe you try to stand, but your body is heavy. Your mind is foggy. By the time you know something is wrong, you can't move. You lose consciousness before you can escape. In Nyos, most people were lying down when the gas arrived. The gas stayed close to the ground. That meant the concentration was highest right where people were sleeping. Even if someone managed to wake up, the air they breathed was so thick with carbon dioxide that they passed out again almost instantly. Let's look at a different example for comparison. In 1944, during World War II, an American ship carrying carbon dioxide tanks exploded in Italy. The gas spread through the surrounding area. People collapsed where they stood. Some never even realized what was happening. The survivors described feeling dizzy, then blacking out. Some saw others fall to the ground without warning. It was silent, quick, and left no time for reaction. This is what happened at Lake Nyos, but on a much larger scale. There's another layer to the science, the role of pressure. Deep lakes like Nyos hold gas under enormous pressure. As more carbon dioxide dissolves in the deep water, it stays trapped by the weight of the water above. But if something disturbs the balance, like a landslide, earthquake, or even a strong wind, the gas can suddenly come out. When it does, it expands rapidly. The pressure drops, and the gas bubbles out of the water, like opening a shaken soda bottle. But unlike soda, this isn't just a little fizz. It's a huge rolling cloud. It's cold, dense, and deadly, and it moves fast. The cloud at Nyos raced down the hill, following every dip and hollow. Anyone in its path was overcome. This science also helps explain why animals died in greater numbers than people. Cattle, goats, and sheep sleep close to the ground. Their noses are almost touching the dirt. The gas was thickest at ground level. They got the full dose. Insects too, anything that crawled or rested low to the earth, didn't stand a chance. Some people have wondered if anything could have saved those in Nyos. What about opening a window, climbing onto a table, running uphill? In theory, getting to higher ground or standing on something tall might have helped, but the gas moved so fast and the effects were so quick that most people didn't have time. And once you breathed in enough carbon dioxide, your body stopped cooperating. Even if you managed to get outside, it might not have helped. The gas was also outside, flowing along the ground. Some survivors who did make it out described the air as thick and hard to breathe. They collapsed just a few steps from their doors. It's strange to think of something so deadly being so quiet. No explosion, no fire, no warning. The only sign was silence, the sudden absence of life. That's what makes the science behind this so chilling. The danger didn't announce itself. It crept in, did its work, then faded back into the air. After the disaster, scientists rushed to understand exactly what had happened. They studied the lake, measured the remaining gas, and tried to model how the cloud spread. They also looked for ways to prevent it from happening again. Their solution was simple in theory. Let the gas out slowly so it couldn't build up again. But even now, decades later, the science isn't perfect. Other lakes around the world have the same risk, the same silent threat, waiting. It's worth thinking about how our bodies handle invisible dangers. Most of the time, our senses protect us. We smell smoke, we feel heat, we see danger coming. But we're not built to notice carbon dioxide. We're not wired to sense it at dangerous levels. That's why events like Nyos feel so unnatural, so hard to process. When you look at the numbers, over 1,700 people gone in a few minutes, it hardly seems real. But the science behind it is simple. It's just chemistry and physics. A gas that's usually harmless, released in the wrong place at the wrong time, becomes a weapon more deadly than any bomb. There's a lesson in that, if you want to see it. Sometimes, the most ordinary things can become dangerous if the conditions are right. It's not always the strange or the exotic that gets us. Sometimes, it's the things we live with every day, and here's something else to consider. After Nyos, scientists started looking for other lakes with the same risk. They found Lake Kivu, between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's much bigger than Nyos. There, even more carbon dioxide is trapped under pressure. Kivu also holds methane, another dangerous gas. If it ever erupts, the disaster could be far worse. So the science isn't just about one night in Cameroon. It's about the hidden risks all around us, risks we can't see or smell, risks that depend on the balance of nature staying just right. If that balance tips, the results can be sudden and terrible. In the end, the science of silent killing isn't complicated. Carbon dioxide is a simple molecule, 2 atoms of oxygen, 1 of carbon. We make it every day. We need it for life on Earth. But it doesn't care about us. It doesn't warn us when it turns against us. Maybe that's the most unsettling part. The thing that killed so many in Nyos wasn't evil. It wasn't planned. It was just nature following its own rules. A chain of events, a build-up, a release, cause and effect. No malice, no mercy. Just a quiet, unstoppable force. We like to think we're in control, that we can predict everything. But sometimes, the universe reminds us how small we are, how much we depend on things working the way they always have. And when they don't, there's not much we can do. If you're wondering how anyone could survive something like that, you're not alone. The truth is, some people did. They were just in the right place at the right time. Maybe a few feet higher, maybe behind a closed door, maybe just lucky. But that's a different story. The story of those who lived through the silent killer, how they made it out, what they remember, and what changed for them after the deadliest night the village ever saw. Let's talk about the people who survived. Not just the science, but the human side. What happened to the few who made it through that night? What did they see, feel, and remember? Their stories are some of the best evidence we have for understanding what really happened at Lake Nyos, and honestly, their memories are more powerful than any chart or data set. The survivors woke up to a world that didn't make sense. Imagine opening your eyes and feeling like everything is wrong, the air is thick, your body won't move right. The sounds you expect, roosters, children, animals, are missing. For most, it was like waking in the middle of a nightmare, except it was real. Many survivors later described the same strange feeling. They felt heavy, confused, almost drunk. Some couldn't move their arms or legs. Others managed to sit up but then blacked out again. A few people remembered crawling or trying to stand but falling down right away. It wasn't just sleepiness. It was something deeper, like their bodies had stopped listening to their brains. One story comes from a woman named Halima Suleiman. She lived in the village of Nyos with her 3 young children. That night she put her kids to bed as usual. She woke up hours later lying on the floor. Her head felt foggy. She couldn't call out for help. She realised her children weren't moving. Halima managed to crawl outside, but the air was just as thick out there. She passed out again, right at her doorstep. When she finally woke up, the sun was already high. Her children were gone. Halima's story isn't unique. Many survivors lost family members in the same house. In some cases, only one person out of a whole family survived. It came down to tiny details, where they slept, how high their bed was, whether a window was open or closed. Some people survived because they happened to be sitting up, or because they'd left a door ajar. Others lived because their house was on a small hill, just a few feet above the worst of the gas. Take Samuel Barr, for example. He survived because his hut was built on a slight rise. That's all it took. He woke up feeling sick, but his body still worked. He stepped outside and saw animals lying everywhere. Cows, chickens, goats, all dead. He called out to neighbours, but heard nothing back. Samuel realised he'd made it through something only a handful of people survived. Another person, Joseph Nquine, described waking up and feeling like the world had ended. He said everything was quiet, as if he'd gone deaf. He wandered through his village, seeing bodies everywhere. The silence was so deep it made him wonder if he was the last person alive. Joseph's words stuck with many people who heard his story. He said, You could not hear a single sound, not even a bird. That kind of silence is hard to imagine unless you've lived through it. Some survivors woke up in the middle of the night, felt the heavy air and tried to escape. A few made it by running uphill, even though it was dark and they were confused. Climbing just a few feet higher sometimes meant the difference between life and death. Others tried to carry family members with them, but the effort was too much. The gas made them weak almost instantly. There are stories of people who survived by pure chance. One man, for example, was out late tending his cattle on a nearby hill. He slept outdoors, away from the main village. When the cloud rolled through, the gas was thinner where he was. He woke up with a headache and sore muscles, but otherwise unharmed. Walking down to the village, he found everyone else gone. Animals tell part of the story too. Many dogs died, but some survived because they were tied up on porches or slept on raised platforms. Cats, which like to sleep in high places, had a better chance. Even chickens that roosted in trees sometimes made it through, while those on the ground died. It's a strange reminder of how small differences can matter so much. Let's look at what happened in the hospitals after the disaster. The survivors who made it out of the villages were rushed to clinics in nearby towns. The doctors and nurses had never seen anything like this before. Patients showed up with strange symptoms, confusion, weakness, and burns in their eyes and throats. Some couldn't speak. Others were paralyzed on one side of their bodies. A few were in a coma for days. Medical staff had to figure things out quickly. They didn't know what had caused the disaster at first. Some thought it was a chemical weapon or a disease. But soon they realized the signs pointed to something else. The survivors' blood was more acidic than normal. Their breathing was shallow. Many had damage to their nervous system. Doctors gave them oxygen, fluids, and pain medicine. Most recovered within days, but a few had lasting problems: memory loss, muscle weakness, or trouble talking. The hospitals filled up fast. There weren't enough beds or supplies. Some survivors had to sleep outside under trees. Aid workers from other parts of Cameroon arrived to help. They brought blankets, food, and medicine. For weeks, the survivors lived in makeshift camps. Many had lost their homes, their families, and everything they owned. There's another side to survival, though. Making it through the night was only the first step. The people who lived had to deal with what came after. The grief, the shock, the fear of the lake. Some survivors couldn't bring themselves to go back to their old villages. The memories were too strong. Others returned, but things were never the same. They'd lost parents, children, friends. The government and aid groups tried to help. They built new houses farther from the lake. They set up counselling for people who needed it. But the trauma lingered. Many survivors said they had nightmares for years. Some developed a deep fear of sleeping. They worried the gas would come back. Even today, people in the area talk about the night the lake breathed out death. Let's dig into why some people survived while others didn't. The main factor was location. Just a few feet in elevation made a big difference. Gas, being cold and dense, moved along the ground and pooled in valleys. Houses built on hills or ridges often escaped the worst. People who slept on beds or platforms a bit higher off the floor had better odds than those on mats at ground level. Open doors and windows also changed things. In some houses, the gas flowed in quickly. In others, it drifted past, leaving pockets of safer air. Some people survived because a window was cracked open, letting the gas out before it built up inside. Others lived because their homes faced away from the main path of the cloud. A few survivors did everything wrong by accident and still made it. One story tells of a boy who hid under his bed, thinking it would protect him. In reality, that was the worst place to be. The gas was thickest down low. But somehow the flow of air in his house kept enough oxygen moving that he survived. Sometimes luck is the only reason. After the disaster, scientists combed the area for clues. They interviewed survivors and mapped out the villages. They measured how high the houses sat above the lake. They looked at which animals died and which survived. All of this helped them piece together the path of the gas cloud. What they found was a patchwork of survival. In one village, half the houses were empty, everyone gone. In another, just a few steps away, whole families survived. The dividing lines were sharp and strange. Sometimes just a small hill or a single wall made the difference. Let's talk about the impact on the local culture. Before the disaster, Lake Nyos was considered a peaceful place. People fished there, watered their animals, and swam on hot days. After the tragedy, the lake became a source of fear. Many saw it as cursed or haunted. Some believed a spirit had been angered. Others thought it was punishment for something the village had done. This change in belief shaped life in the area for years. People avoided the lake. Children were warned not to go near. Even scientists working there felt uneasy. The survivors carried these feelings with them. For them, the lake was no longer just water. It was a reminder of what they'd lost. The survivors also became important witnesses for the world. Their stories travelled far beyond Cameroon. Journalists wrote about their experiences. Scientists listened closely, using their memories to build models of what happened. The survivors' words helped prove that it was a natural disaster, not a crime or an attack. Some survivors travelled to other countries to tell their stories. They spoke at conferences and on TV. Their voices made people pay attention to the risks of lakes like Nyos. Thanks to them, scientists started searching for other lakes that might be dangerous. They found several, some in Africa, some in Asia, even a few in Europe. There's one more thing survivors had to face: being seen as different. In the months after the disaster, people from nearby areas sometimes treated them with suspicion. Some thought they were unlucky or somehow at fault. This made it even harder to rebuild their lives. The survivors formed close bonds with each other. They shared grief, supported each other, and worked together to start over. Over time, the survivors built new routines. They planted crops, raised animals, and sent children to school. The government helped set up new villages, with houses built on higher ground. Slowly, life returned. But the memory of that night never really faded. For many, each August brings back the fear. Some say they still wake up at night, listening for signs that the lake is about to breathe again. Let's look at the numbers. Out of the roughly 1,800 people living in the area, more than 1,700 died. That means fewer than 100 survived. Most of those survivors lost at least one family member. Some lost everyone. The odds were against them, but they made it through. Their stories aren't just sad. They're also a lesson in how random survival can be. The survivors' experiences also changed the way scientists look at natural disasters. Before Nyos, few people imagined that a lake could kill so silently and quickly. Now, researchers study lakes with strange chemistry more closely. They interview locals, map out villages, and look for warning signs. The stories of Nyos survivors are used to train rescue teams, doctors, and aid workers. Here's something else that's important. The survivors didn't just help scientists. They helped each other. In the days after the disaster, those who could walk went from house to house looking for anyone alive. They shared food, water, and comfort. They buried the dead with whatever rituals they could manage. Even in the worst times, people found ways to care for each other. There's a lesson in that too. When disaster hits, people don't always panic or turn selfish. Often they come together. They look out for neighbours. They share what little they have left. The survivors of Nyos showed this again and again. Their courage is as much a part of the story as the science. Let's talk about what's happened since. Many of the survivors moved to new towns. Some stayed in the area, farming the same land as before. The government installed pipes in Lake Nyos to slowly release gas from the deep water. This helps prevent another deadly cloud. Scientists visit regularly to check the lake's chemistry and make sure the pipes are working. But the risk is never zero. Survivors know this better than anyone. Some say they feel uneasy every time they see mist rising from the water. Others avoid the lake entirely. The memory of what happened is still fresh, even decades later. For those who survived, life is divided into two parts, before the disaster and after. Some carry physical reminders, like scars or health problems. Others live with the emotional weight, but all of them share a story that few can truly understand. If you talk to survivors today, many will tell you the same thing. They're grateful to be alive, but they wish things had been different. They remember family and friends lost that night. They remember the silence, the confusion, the slow return to life, and they hope that sharing their story will help prevent such a thing from ever happening again. Here's a thought that sticks with me. Survival isn't just about luck or being in the right place. It's about what you do after, how you rebuild, how you remember. The survivors of Nyos show that even in the face of something terrifying, people can find meaning. They can build new lives, honor those they lost, and warn others about dangers that are hard to see. Their story is a reminder that nature doesn't play favorites. Sometimes, the difference between life and death is measured in inches. Sometimes, it's a matter of timing. And sometimes, it's just a door left open or a bed built a little higher. But the survivors didn't just sit with their grief. They acted. They spoke up. They helped scientists understand what happened. They made sure their story was heard, and in doing so, they helped protect others. That's the real legacy of the survivors of Lake Nyos. They took something senseless and turned it into a warning for the world. Their voices changed how we see hidden dangers. They showed that even the quietest people in the smallest villages can have a big impact. As time goes on, the story of Lake Nyos becomes part of a bigger picture. It's not just about one village or one night. It's about how humans respond to disaster, how we cope, learn, and move forward. The survivor's story is a piece of that puzzle. And here's the thing that keeps me curious. If something like this could happen once, could it happen again? Are there other lakes, other places, where the same silent threat is waiting? But here's the terrifying truth. Lake Nyos is not the only killer lake in the world. Lake Nyos showed us what these lakes can do. Lake Kivu could do it 300 times worse. But it's not just those two. The truth is, there are other lakes around the world with the same hidden danger. Some are even bigger, some are closer to people's homes. And the thing is, most of us don't even know they exist. Let's start with Lake Monoun. This lake is also in Cameroon, about 60 miles from Nyos. What's strange is that Monoun actually burped first. 2 years before Nyos, in 1984, Monoun released a deadly cloud of gas. It happened late in the evening, just like at Nyos. People in the village of Njindun were getting ready for bed. Suddenly a loud noise came from the lake. Some said it sounded like a gunshot or a muffled explosion. Within minutes, people started collapsing. Some were found on the road, halfway home, as if they'd just dropped. Others were found inside their houses. When rescuers arrived, they saw that animals had died too. Cows, goats, chickens, all lying still. In total, 37 people lost their lives that night. The survivors described the same odd feeling. Weakness, confusion, burning in the eyes and throat. At first, nobody understood what had happened. Some thought it was a terrorist attack or poison. But when scientists came to investigate, they found something weird in the water. Bubbles rising from the bottom. The water near the surface was safe, but deeper down it was loaded with carbon dioxide, just like Nyos. The gas had built up over years, maybe decades. When something disturbed the lake, maybe a landslide, maybe cold rain, the gas rushed up and spread out at ground level. here's what's really unsettling. If Monoun hadn't happened, scientists might not have figured out Nyos so quickly. It was almost like a warning shot. But Monoun was smaller, both in size and in the number of people nearby. If it had been a bigger lake or a more crowded village, the death toll could have been much higher. After Nyos, people realised Monoun could do it again, so they started looking for other lakes that might be storing up gas. That's when they found the real monster, Lake Kivu. Lake Kivu sits on the border between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's huge, about 1,000 times bigger than Nyos. Millions of people live around its shores. These cities of Goma and Bukavu are right next to the water. Kivu is beautiful. The water is deep and clear. Fishermen go out every day. Ferries cross from one town to another. People swim, wash clothes and collect water for drinking. It looks peaceful, but under the surface something very different is happening. The bottom of Lake Kivu holds a massive amount of gas. Not just carbon dioxide, but also methane. Methane is even more flammable. Scientists estimate there are around 60 billion cubic meters of methane and 300 billion cubic meters of carbon dioxide trapped in the deep water. That's enough gas to fill up thousands of stadiums. It's so much that, if it all came out at once, it could cover the nearby cities in a deadly cloud. Some experts say millions of people would be at risk. So why is there so much gas in Kivu? It's because the lake sits in a rift valley, a place where the ground is slowly pulling apart. Hot springs and volcanic rocks under the lake add more gas all the time. The deep water never mixes with the surface, so the gas builds up year after year. It's like shaking a bottle of soda but never opening it. The pressure just gets higher and higher. Scientists have been watching Kivu for decades. They know the signs to look for: gas bubbles, changes in water colour, even small earthquakes that could stir things up. But the truth is, nobody knows exactly what could set it off. Maybe a big earthquake, maybe a landslide, maybe a volcanic eruption, or maybe nothing for hundreds of years. The risk is always there, just waiting. Let's imagine for a second what a lake overturn at Kivu would look like. First, you'd see bubbles rising to the surface, lots of them. The water would turn cloudy and might even boil in some spots. Then a low cloud would start spreading across the lake, moving toward the towns. People nearby might not notice anything at first. The gas is invisible. But then breathing would get harder. People would feel weak, dizzy and confused. If they didn't get to higher ground fast, they'd collapse, just like at Nyos, but on a much bigger scale. What makes Kivu even scarier is the number of people living around it. More than 2 million people call the shoreline home. There are schools, hospitals, markets and busy roads all right next to the water. A disaster here wouldn't just affect a few villages, it would hit whole cities. Hospitals would be overwhelmed. Rescue teams might not be able to reach everyone. The scale is almost impossible to imagine. And here's something else. Kivu is not just a threat. It's also a resource. That methane trapped at the bottom can be turned into electricity. In fact, both Rwanda and Congo have started building power plants that pull gas from the lake and use it to make energy. It's a clever idea. Pumping out gas lowers the risk of a disaster and gives people power for their homes and businesses. But it's also risky. The pipes and pumps have to work perfectly. If something goes wrong, it could stir up more gas than expected. Scientists and engineers are careful, but the lake doesn't always follow the rules. Now, let's look beyond Africa. Are there lakes like this elsewhere? The answer is yes, but they're not as dangerous as Nyos or Kivu. Still, it's worth knowing about them. In Indonesia, for example, there's Lake Toba. It's one of the largest volcanic lakes in the world. The water is deep, over 1,600 feet in some places. Volcanic gases bubble up from the bottom, and there's some carbon dioxide trapped in the deep layers. But so far, scientists haven't found enough to cause a sudden disaster. The water mixes more than at Nyos or Kivu, so gas doesn't build up as easily. People live around the lake, and they use it for fishing and travel. But there's always a small risk, especially after heavy rains or earthquakes. Another example is Lake Albano in Italy. This lake is much smaller, but it sits inside a volcanic crater near Rome. Scientists have measured gas at the bottom, and sometimes after storms or landslides, bubbles rise quickly to the surface. The gas is mostly carbon dioxide, plus a little sulfur. In the past, people have reported fish dying suddenly or birds falling from the sky. But so far there hasn't been an event like Nyos. Italian authorities keep a close watch just in case. There's also Lake Rotorua in New Zealand. This lake is famous for its hot springs and bubbling mud pools. The water sometimes smells of sulfur, and you can see steam rising from the surface. Gases from underground come up through the water all the time. Sometimes the smell is strong enough to make people cough, but the gas levels aren't high enough to cause a deadly cloud. The danger here is more about sudden bursts, like a geyser or a small explosion, than a silent spreading gas cloud. So, what makes a lake really dangerous? It comes down to a few things: lots of gas, deep water, and little mixing between the top and bottom layers. If a lake is shallow or mixes often, the gas escapes bit by bit. But if it's deep and still, the gas can build up for years. The right trigger, a landslide, an earthquake, even a strong wind, can set it off. Let's go back to Africa for a minute. Besides Nyos, Monoun and Kivu, there are a few other lakes that scientists worry about. Lake Mweru, on the border between Zambia and Congo, is very deep. It has some gas at the bottom, but not as much as Kivu. Lake Tanganyika, one of the largest lakes in the world, also has deep water and volcanic rocks nearby. So far, the gas levels are low, but they're watched closely. In South America, there are lakes in the Andes Mountains with volcanic gases. Most of these are small and far from big cities, so the risk is low. But after Nyos, scientists started testing lakes everywhere just to be sure. Here's something that's often missed in news stories. Most lakes are completely safe. Even deep lakes usually mix their water enough that gas doesn't build up. It takes a special set of conditions for a lake to turn deadly. You need the right geology, the right climate, and the right kind of gas. If any one of those is missing, the danger drops to almost zero. Still, the lakes that do have these risks are cause for real concern. And it's not just about sudden disasters. Even small leaks of gas can hurt people. In Cameroon, after the Nyos disaster, people noticed that sometimes cows would fall over near the shore. No warning, no sound, just a patch of bad air. Farmers learned to watch for strange bubbles or changes in the water. Sometimes they'd see dead fish floating and know to stay away for a while. There's another angle to this story. Some scientists think there are lakes we haven't even found yet that could be dangerous. In remote mountain regions or in places where people don't go often, there might be deep lakes with gas at the bottom. It's possible that disasters have happened before, but nobody connected the dots. Maybe a village disappeared, or animals died suddenly, and it was blamed on spirits or disease. Without careful study, the real cause would never be known. After Nyos, teams from all over the world started looking for these hidden risks. They used boats, underwater robots, and special sensors to test lakes in Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Americas. They made maps of gas levels and looked for warning signs like sudden changes in water colour or fish kills. They set up early warning systems in some places, with alarms to tell people if gas is rising. But not every lake has scientists watching. In poorer countries or in areas with conflict, it's hard to keep track of every danger. Some lakes are simply too remote. Others are seen as sacred or private, so outsiders aren't welcome. The truth is, we probably don't know the full list of risky lakes. Let's talk about something that often surprises people: the connection between these killer lakes and volcanoes. Almost all the dangerous lakes sit near volcanoes, or right on top of faults where the Earth's crust is cracked. That's where gas from deep underground can reach the surface. The gas bubbles up through the rocks and gets trapped in the water. If the lake is deep enough, the pressure keeps the gas dissolved until something sets it free. Sometimes the volcano itself is the trigger. If a volcano erupts under a lake, it can heat the water and force gas to rise. Lava or hot ash falling into the lake can do the same. This happened at Lake Nyos, where the bottom sits on volcanic rock. At Kivu there are active volcanoes nearby, and earthquakes are common. Each quake shakes the ground and stirs up the lake, raising the risk. Now let's look at how people have responded to these dangers. After Nyos, engineers came up with a way to diffuse lakes that hold too much gas. They use pipes, sometimes as long as a football field, to reach the deep water. The pipes let the gas escape slowly, a little at a time. The bubbles rise up and mix with the air where they're harmless. It's not a perfect solution, but it cuts the risk a lot. At Lake Monoun, they installed pipes a few years after the disaster. The gas levels dropped and people felt safer. At Nyos, it took longer, but now there are several pipes working all the time. Scientists check the water every few months, making sure gas isn't building up again. At Kivu, things are trickier. The lake is so big and the amount of gas so huge that pipes alone aren't enough. That's why they use methane to make electricity. The hope is that by removing the gas for power, they can lower the risk while also helping people. But it's a slow process and the risk isn't gone. There are other ideas too. Some experts suggest building early warning systems, alarms that go off if gas starts to rise. Others talk about evacuation plans or public education campaigns, teaching people what to do if they see bubbles or smell something strange. But here's the hard part. Most people living near these lakes have other worries: jobs, food, health, and safety. The risk of a killer lake is real, but it's not always their biggest concern. Some don't trust scientists or the government. Others don't want to leave their homes, even for a short time. It's hard to prepare for something you've never seen. There's also the problem of money. Setting up pipes, alarms, and monitoring systems costs a lot. Poor countries have to decide between fixing roads, building schools, and protecting against a rare disaster. Sometimes the lakes get ignored until something bad happens. So, what do we do with this knowledge? For one, it makes us aware that nature still holds surprises. Even something as peaceful looking as a lake can hide a deadly secret. It reminds us that the world isn't always as safe as it seems, but it also shows that with science, teamwork, and planning, we can lower the risk. The story of Nyos, Monoun, and Kivu is a warning, but it's also a lesson in resilience. People who lost everything rebuilt their lives. Scientists from around the world came together to solve a puzzle. Local leaders worked to keep their communities safe. Even now, the story isn't over. New technologies are being developed. New lakes are being tested. The hope is that, by sharing what we've learned, we can stop disasters before they start. Here's something to think about. We often focus on the disasters that make headlines: earthquakes, floods, hurricanes. But sometimes, the things that scare us most are the ones we can't see. The silent, invisible dangers. The ones that creep up without warning. When you look out over a calm lake, it's hard to picture the power hidden below. But now you know. Some lakes hold more than water. They hold a secret that can change lives in a single night. The story of these killer lakes isn't just about fear. It's about paying attention, asking questions, and never forgetting that the world can surprise us in ways we never expect. So what are we doing about it? Can we prevent another Nyos? So now we know what these lakes can do. We know how many people live around them, and we know there are systems in place. Pipes, early warning alarms, even power plants, meant to keep things under control. But here's the question most people worry about. Could it happen again? Could another village, or even an entire city, go to sleep and never wake up? Is there something we're still missing? That's the real puzzle. Let's start with the big one, Lake Nyos. Scientists have installed pipes there. These pipes pull gas-rich water from deep down and let it bubble up safely at the surface. It sounds simple, but it's actually pretty clever. By letting the gas out slowly, you stop it from reaching dangerous levels. It's kind of like letting the fizz out of a soda bottle one tiny bubble at a time, instead of shaking it up and popping the cap. So far, it's worked. The gas levels have dropped. People feel safer. But even with these pipes, there's always a question in the back of everyone's mind. What if the pipes break? What if the power goes out? What if something blocks the pipes, or they get old and corroded? The truth is, no system is perfect. Machines fail. Weather changes. Sometimes people just forget to do regular checks. There have been small problems over the years, a pipe clogging up, or a pump failing for a few hours. Nothing huge, but enough to remind everyone that danger isn't gone forever. All it takes is one missed warning, one unexpected storm, and things could shift again. Let's look at Lake Kivu for a second. It's much bigger, much deeper, and holds way more gas. The solution there is more complicated. They don't just vent the gas, they use it. Big pipes bring up the deep water, and special plants turn the methane into electricity. It helps power homes and factories in Rwanda and Congo. That's great. But it means there are more moving parts, more things that can go wrong. Imagine a big earthquake, not even a huge one, just enough to shake the ground and rattle the machinery. If that happens, pipes could crack, power plants could shut down, gas flow could suddenly change. And if the right or wrong mix of things happens all at once, earthquake, broken pipes, a thunderstorm, then the gas at the bottom of the lake could start to rise faster than anyone expects. Here's another angle. These lakes are changing all the time. Rainy seasons fill them up. Dry years lower the water, forests are cut down, cities grow. All these things affect what happens under the surface. Scientists try to track it, but nature doesn't always give warning. Sometimes a small change on the surface can cause a big change deep below. Some experts worry about what they call unknown unknowns. Basically, the stuff we haven't even thought of yet. Maybe there's a kind of underwater landslide that nobody has seen before. Maybe a new volcano forms under the lake. Or maybe, just maybe, something totally unexpected happens. Like a large boat capsizing, or a new dam changing the way water flows. Each of these could trigger something bigger. There's also the human factor. Over time, people get used to living with risk. The first years after a disaster, everyone's alert. The government spends money on safety. Scientists visit often. But as years pass, memories fade, budgets get cut, pipes wear out. Maybe people stop testing the water as often. Maybe someone forgets to replace a part or ignores a warning sign. It's happened before, in other types of disasters. The longer things stay calm, the more likely people are to get comfortable and let their guard down. And then there's climate change. This is a new challenge that wasn't on anyone's radar when the Nyos disaster happened in 1986. The world today is warmer, storms are stronger, rainfall patterns are shifting. In some places, droughts last longer. In others, the rainy season comes harder and faster. All this can change the way gas builds up in lakes. Hotter temperatures can make the surface water warmer, which makes it less likely to mix with the cold, deep water. That means the gas below stays trapped even longer, building up more pressure. More pressure means more danger if something finally sets it loose. So can it happen again? The simple answer is yes. The risk isn't zero. The danger has been lowered, but not erased. And the lakes aren't the only problem. Let's talk about lakes that haven't been studied much. In remote parts of Africa, Asia, or even South America, There are deep lakes that nobody has tested for gases. Some are hard to reach. Some are in countries dealing with war or poverty, so there's no money for research. Some are simply forgotten. If gas builds up in one of those lakes, would anyone notice? Would anyone warn the people living nearby? It's a real concern. Plus, not every system is as well maintained as the ones at Nyos or Kivu. In some places, the pipes are old. Spare parts are hard to find. It's difficult to get experts out to fix things quickly. Sometimes the people in charge move away or retire and nobody takes their place. When that happens, the risk goes up. Now let's look at how people and governments have tried to lower the risk in other places. After Nyos, countries with deep volcanic lakes started testing their water more often. Scientists built new tools, underwater robots, special sensors, to measure gas levels. In some places, they set up alarms that sound if gas starts rising. In others, they launched education campaigns so people know what to do if they see bubbles or smell something strange. But even the best systems have limits. Let's say an alarm goes off in the middle of the night. People wake up confused. Some might not believe it's real. Others might be too slow to react. And sometimes, the gas rises so fast that there's barely any time to get out of the way. Even with warnings, disaster can strike. There's another problem. As cities grow, more people move closer to the water. They build new homes, schools, and markets right on the shore. It's easy to understand why. The land is fertile. There's fish to catch, water to drink, and good roads for trade. But this means more people are exposed if something does go wrong. In the 1980s, only a few thousand people lived near Lake Nyos. Now it's more. At Kivu, it's millions. The risk grows with every new house and every new road. So, should people move away? That's a tough question. For many, the lakes are their whole world. Their families have lived there for generations. They have jobs, friends, and land. Asking them to leave is like asking them to give up everything. Most would rather take their chances. And honestly, for most of their lives, nothing bad happens. The odds are on their side, until they're not. Now think about the science. Are there new ways to make these lakes safer? Some researchers have suggested building more pipes, or even stirring the water with giant underwater fans to help gas escape slowly. Others talk about using satellites to watch for small changes in the water's colour or temperature, the kind of early warning you can't see from the ground. There are even experiments with special types of bacteria that eat methane, turning it into harmless gas before it can build up. Each idea has pros and cons. More pipes mean more cost and more maintenance. Fans or robots could break down in harsh weather. Satellites might miss something on a cloudy day, and bacteria work slowly so they can't fix a sudden problem. Here's something interesting. Some scientists are looking at the way these gases move through the water. They use computer models, kind of like weather forecasts but for lakes. These models help predict what might happen if there's an earthquake or a huge storm. They look at things like wind speed, rainfall, and even the shape of the lake bottom. The hope is that, with better predictions, people can get more warning before something bad happens. But predictions aren't perfect. Nature loves surprises. Let's also talk about the idea of using the gas as a resource. At Lake Kivu, they're turning methane into electricity. That's smart. It means less gas stuck at the bottom and more power for people. But it's not simple. If the machines work perfectly, the risk goes down. But if something goes wrong, if a pipe bursts or the system stops suddenly, there's a chance of stirring up more gas than planned. It's a balancing act. Safe as long as everything works. Dangerous if it doesn't. And here's another twist. As people pull gas from the lake, they change the way the water mixes. Sometimes, removing gas too quickly could actually make the deep water less stable. If the layers get mixed up, it could bring more gas up than expected, or even start a chain reaction. That's why scientists are careful to go slow, measuring all the time. Still, it's a bit like walking a tightrope. The reward is big, but so is the risk. Let's zoom out for a minute. Could something like Nyos happen somewhere totally unexpected? Is there a risk in lakes that aren't near volcanoes? For the most part, the answer is no. You need the right conditions: deep water, lots of gas, little mixing, and a trigger. But nature always has surprises. There are deep lakes in Siberia, in the Rocky Mountains, and in other remote places. Most don't have the same gas problems as African lakes. But after Nyos, scientists started checking everywhere, just in case. And here's something else. As the climate keeps changing, new risks might pop up. Lakes that have always been safe could change. Maybe a drought makes the water layers more stable, trapping more gas. Maybe a new factory dumps warm water into a lake, changing its chemistry. Or maybe a new dam changes how water flows. Each of these things can have ripple effects, sometimes in ways nobody expects. So, what can we actually do to stop another disaster? The first step is knowledge, knowing where the dangerous lakes are, testing the water often, making sure the pipes and alarms are working, teaching people what danger signs to look for, like sudden fish deaths or strange bubbles on the surface. That way, even if something goes wrong, people have a chance to get to safety. The next step is planning, making sure emergency teams know what to do, having clear plans for evacuation, making sure hospitals are ready and roads are clear. It sounds simple, but in many places it's a real challenge. Money is tight. People are busy with everyday life. It's hard to keep everyone prepared for something that might never happen. And then there's the question of fairness. Most of the people living near these lakes aren't rich. They don't have a lot of power. They might not even know the risks. So who's responsible for keeping them safe? Is it the local government, the country, the world? After Nyos, help came from all over: scientists, engineers, volunteers. But not every disaster gets that kind of attention. Sometimes communities are left to face the danger alone. Here's the thing that keeps me curious. Even with all our science, all our plans, we still can't control everything. Nature is always one step ahead. We do our best, build systems, check the water, run computer models, but there's always some unknown, some piece of the puzzle we haven't found yet. But that doesn't mean we give up. Every time we learn more, the risk goes down a bit. Every new idea, every test, every safety drill, each one helps. And even when things look calm on the surface, it's worth remembering what's below. Not just in lakes, but in life. Sometimes the biggest dangers are the ones you can't see. So can it happen again? Yes, it's possible, but it's less likely than before. We have more knowledge, better tools, and a sense of what's at stake. People are watching, testing, and planning. The world is more aware than it was in 1986. But it's never zero risk. As long as deep lakes hold gas, there's a chance. As long as people live nearby, there's a reason to be careful. And as long as nature keeps changing, the story isn't finished. The lesson from Nyos, Kivu, and all the other lakes is simple. Pay attention. Don't take calm water for granted. Respect the power that hides in quiet places. Tonight, somewhere in Central Africa, these lakes sit quiet in the dark. The threat that comes from these lakes is quiet. It doesn't show up with flashing lights or loud warnings. There's no smoke, no fire, no sirens. On the surface, everything seems normal. People go about their days, they fish, they farm, they gather at the water's edge to talk or wash clothes. At night the villagers settle into sleep. The air cools. The only sounds are insects, maybe a faint breeze, maybe a distant animal. And underneath it all, the danger waits. It's strange, but some of the most dangerous things in the world are the ones you can't see or feel. With these lakes, that's the biggest problem. There's nothing obvious to warn people. No strange colour in the water, no smell in the air. The gas builds up in silence, deep below the surface, layer after layer, year after year. Nobody notices until it's too late. Let's talk about why this threat is so different from other disasters. Most people think of natural hazards as things that give you some kind of warning. Hurricanes blow in with heavy winds and rain. Earthquakes rumble and shake the ground. Even a volcano gives some clues. A plume of smoke, trembling earth, maybe even small eruptions before a big one. But the gas from these lakes doesn't announce itself. It just appears, rolling out across the ground, moving in silence. That's what happened at Nyos, and what could happen elsewhere. Something else makes this threat unique. How it affects the people living nearby. Imagine living your whole life beside a lake. It's part of your world. You drink from it. You swim in it. You see it every day. It's beautiful, calming, and dependable. Then, one night, something invisible rises from the water. It moves into the village, into the homes, and takes away the air people need to live. There's no panic, no chance to run. People simply fall asleep and never wake up. This quiet danger is hard for people to truly understand. We're used to thinking that if something deadly is coming, our bodies will warn us. We'll get a bad feeling, or smell something strange, or spot a warning sign. But with this gas, the body doesn't always know what's happening. The first sign of trouble is often drowsiness, then confusion, then nothing. It's like the world just fades out. Now why does this still matter, even years after Nyos and Monoun? Because the same kind of threat exists in other places. The problem isn't just the lakes we already know about. It's the ones that haven't been studied closely, or that nobody thinks of as dangerous. Deep lakes in other countries, places where people live close to the water but don't have the money or technology to check for gas buildup. If the same thing happened there, the results could be just as tragic, or even worse. Here's another detail that makes this threat hard to fight. It doesn't look like a threat. Water is supposed to be safe. It's life-giving, not life-taking. When people talk about disasters, they rarely think lake. They think of storms, floods, even wild animals. But a silent cloud of gas. That's not something you see in movies or hear about in school. It feels unreal, almost like a ghost story. But it's real, and it's possible. Scientists have named this kind of event a Limnic eruption. That just means a sudden release of gas from deep in a lake. The word sounds technical, but the idea is simple. Gas gets trapped underwater, and if the layers mix the wrong way, it rushes out all at once. And there's no way to stop it once it starts. When it happened at Nyos, the cloud moved out of the lake and across the valley in just minutes. People didn't even have time to stand up. Let's think about what makes these places risky. For a limnic eruption to happen, you need a few ingredients. First, a deep lake. Shallow lakes don't trap gas the same way. Second, a source of gas, usually volcanic activity under the lake or plant material rotting at the bottom. Third, still water. If the lake mixes too much, the gas escapes little by little. But if the layers stay separate, gas can build up for years. Finally, you need a trigger, something to shake or disturb the water, like a landslide, an earthquake, or even a strong wind. Take Lake Kivu as an example. It's much larger than Nyos, and millions of people live nearby. The gas at the bottom is a mix of carbon dioxide and methane. Methane is flammable, which means there's another danger. An explosion is possible if the gas reaches the surface and meets a spark. But even without fire, just the gas itself could cause a disaster. Scientists estimate that Kivu holds enough gas to threaten the lives of over 2 million people. That's not a guess. It's based on measurements taken by teams from around the world. Other lakes, in places like Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, also have the right ingredients. Many haven't been studied closely, so we don't know if they're safe or not. In some countries, there's no money or expertise to check. It's not because people don't care. It's just that there are so many other problems to deal with. Clean water, food, jobs, all of those come first. The threat from a silent lake is easy to ignore until something happens. Now let's look at what makes it so hard to keep these lakes safe. The technology to remove gas exists, but it's expensive. Pipes need to be installed, machines need to run all the time, and experts need to check the systems regularly. In rich countries, that might be possible, but in places with less money, it's a struggle. Sometimes, outside help comes in. Scientists from Europe or America, charities, or the United Nations. But funding runs out, people leave, and the danger stays. Maintenance is another big issue. Even the best equipment breaks down. Pipes get old. Pumps clog. The climate can make things worse. Heavy rains might damage roads and make it hard to reach the lake. If a part fails, it might take weeks or months to get a new one. In that time, gas can start to build up again. It's a constant battle, and it never really ends. There's also the question of trust. After a disaster, people are scared. They want answers. When scientists or officials tell them that pipes and alarms will keep them safe, some believe it, but others don't. Memories of the past are strong. Some people just accept the risk. Others move away. Some stay, but keep a packed bag by the door just in case. Life goes on, but the fear is always there, just under the surface. Let's talk about the science for a minute. Researchers are always looking for better ways to predict and prevent disasters. They use underwater robots to take samples from deep in the lake. Satellites can track changes in water temperature or colour, which might show if gas is starting to move. Special sensors can sniff the air above the water, looking for tiny traces of gas. But nothing is perfect. Sometimes the signs come too late. Sometimes the technology doesn't work as planned, or the data is misread. Computer models are useful, but they aren't crystal balls. Scientists feed in numbers, lake depth, gas levels, temperature, wind speed, and more. The model runs thousands of what-if scenarios. What if there's an earthquake? What if the rainy season is extra strong? What if the pipes stop working for a week? The answers help people plan, but they're still just guesses. Nature doesn't always follow the rules. Here's something else to think about. As more people move close to these lakes, the risk grows. More homes, more schools, more roads. Each means more lives at stake if something goes wrong. In some places, city leaders have tried to move people away from the most dangerous spots. Sometimes it works. Other times people come back or new families move in. The land is good, the fishing's easy, and the water is close. For many, it's worth the risk. Now, let's consider what happens during a quiet year. Nothing bad happens. The pipes work. The alarms stay silent. People start to relax. Maybe they skip a test or wait a little longer before fixing a broken part. Money goes to other problems. Schools, roads, hospitals. It's natural. But every year, the gas builds up a bit more. The longer things stay quiet, the bigger the threat becomes. Sometimes people forget the past. New families move in who never heard the stories. Kids grow up hearing rumours but not the details. As memories fade, so does the sense of danger. That's when accidents are most likely to happen. Not because people are careless, but because they're human. It's hard to worry about something you can't see or feel. Let's look at the warning systems. Some lakes have alarms that go off if gas starts to rise. Others have radio announcements or even old-fashioned bells. But alarms don't always work. Sometimes they break or go off by mistake. Sometimes people ignore them, thinking it's just a test or a false signal. In a real emergency, confusion can slow everything down. Panic can make things worse. Evacuation plans are another challenge. Getting hundreds or thousands of people away from a lake in the middle of the night isn't easy. Roads might be narrow or muddy. Some people don't have cars. Others are too old or sick to travel quickly. Even with practice drills, things rarely go as planned. In some places, there aren't enough shelters or safe spots nearby. All of this makes the threat harder to manage. Now here's a different angle. The gas at the bottom of some lakes can be used as a resource. At Lake Kivu, for example, methane is captured and turned into electricity. That means less gas is left in the water, which reduces the risk of a disaster. But this kind of project is risky too. If the equipment fails, or if too much gas is pulled up at once, the water layers can mix in ways nobody expected. Instead of making things safer, it could cause new problems. Some researchers have suggested new ideas. Maybe giant underwater fans could stir the water and let gas escape more slowly. Maybe certain types of bacteria could eat the gas before it builds up. Maybe satellites could spot danger early, even through clouds. Each plan has good points and bad. Fans and robots might break down. Bacteria work slowly. Satellites sometimes miss small changes. There's no perfect answer. Think about other disasters for a minute. When a hurricane is coming, there's time to prepare. When a volcano rumbles, scientists can measure the gas and the shaking. But with a limnic eruption, the window is tiny. The gas moves out quickly and there's almost no warning. That's what makes this threat so different and so scary. Here's another thing that adds to the risk: climate change. As weather patterns shift, the lakes change too. Hotter air makes the surface water warmer. This keeps the deep water from mixing, so gas stays trapped longer. Stronger storms or sudden floods can shake things up and trigger a release. Droughts can lower the water and change how the gas collects. Each change, big or small, can tip the balance. And since the climate is always shifting, the threat is never quite the same from year to year. You might wonder, why not just move everyone away from these lakes forever? In some cases, people tried. After Nyos, survivors were relocated to new villages, but many returned or settled close by. The land is valuable, and the lakes are a source of life as well as danger. For most, the chance of disaster feels small compared to the needs of daily life. It's hard to change generations of tradition and connection in just a few years. Let's not forget the emotional cost. Living with invisible danger changes people. Some have nightmares or trouble sleeping. Others worry every time they hear a strange noise at night. Children grow up with stories of what happened. For some, there's a feeling of being watched by the water. A quiet, patient threat that never really leaves. There's also a question of fairness. Most of the people at risk are not the ones with the power to fix things. They don't control the budgets, or the science, or the plans. Many didn't even know about the risk until it was too late. After disasters, help sometimes arrives, but it's not always enough, or it doesn't last. The quiet threat remains, and people have to find ways to live with it. So what's the lesson in all of this? Sometimes the biggest threats are the ones that hide in plain sight. They don't roar or shake the ground. They don't give you time to run. They wait quietly, building up out of view, and when they move, it's fast, silent, and total. But knowledge helps. Every test, every new idea, every safety drill makes the world a little safer. Even if we can't erase the risk, we can shrink it. We can pay attention, make plans, and teach new generations what to watch for. The quiet threat is still there, but so is the power to watch, to learn and to act. The lakes remain, the threat remains. But so do the people, living their lives, trusting that the worst won't come tonight. And at the edge of the water, under the stars, the world goes on, quiet, but never completely safe. As the night deepens and the world gets still, it's worth remembering that some dangers move in silence. But so does hope, and so does the will to survive. And now, as the world settles towards sleep, the story waits for what comes next. When you think about what happened at Nyos and what could happen at lakes like Kivu, you realise we're talking about something bigger than just a single event. This is a story about how people, nature, and the unknown all tangle together. It's not just about gas in the water or a silent disaster. It's about the challenge of living with risks that don't have easy answers. And honestly, it's a reminder that not everything scary comes with a warning sign. If you zoom out for a second, these sleeping lake disasters are really rare. Most lakes are safe. The odds of something like Nyos happening again tomorrow are low. But low doesn't mean zero. That's the trouble. People have to make choices based on what might happen, not what probably will. That's a hard way to live. It takes a kind of steady courage. You don't get a medal for it, but it's there all the same. Let's think about how humans usually handle invisible threats. We're good at paying attention to things we can see or hear. Loud noises, flashing lights, the smell of smoke, those get our attention fast. But things that hide, gases, germs, slow-building dangers, those are tougher. Our brains aren't really built to worry about the stuff that's silent and slow. That's why stories like Nyos feel so unsettling. You can't see it coming. There's no natural instinct that tells you to run from air that seems normal. It messes with how we understand the world. And there's something almost unfair about it, right? The people who live by those lakes didn't do anything wrong. They weren't careless or foolish. They just trusted the land and water around them, the same way people have for thousands of years. So when something goes wrong, when a lake burps, and people lose their lives in sleep, it feels wrong at a deep level. It's not a story of someone making a bad choice. It's just nature doing what it does without warning or reason. But here's the thing. Humans are stubborn. Even after a disaster, people find ways to keep going. They rebuild. They come up with new tools or new rules. Some stay, some move, some spend years trying to make sense of what happened. There's a kind of strength in that. It's not about pretending the danger isn't real. It's about refusing to let fear shape every part of life. Sometimes people ask, why don't they just leave? But moving away from a place isn't always simple. These lakes are more than just water. For generations they've been the centre of life. Fishing, farming, family gatherings and memories. Even when there's a risk, walking away from all that is hard. It's not just about safety, it's about roots and history and hope that things will get better. Let's talk about hope for a second. After Nyos, teams from all over the world showed up to help. Engineers brought pipes and machines. Doctors treated the survivors. Scientists studied every inch of the water and the land. People donated money. Some plans worked better than others, but the important thing is that people tried. They didn't just shrug and walk away. They did what they could with the tools they had. That's not a small thing. Technology keeps getting better too. Sensors are cheaper. Robots can go deeper. Even smartphones can help warn people faster. In some places, there are even apps that send out alerts if something strange happens in the lake. That means people have more ways to keep track of danger and maybe more time to react if something goes wrong. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Here's another thought. Every time there's a disaster, or even a near miss, people learn something new. Mistakes get noticed. Plans change. Sometimes new laws get passed, or new habits form. Maybe a village moves a little farther from the water. Maybe kids learn about gas in school so they know what to look for. Over time, all those small changes add up. The danger might not go away, but people get better at living with it. But there's always a trade-off. Keeping a lake safe costs money and time. It means taking care of equipment, running drills, and checking sensors. That can be tough in places where every dollar is needed for food, schools, or medicine. Sometimes leaders have to make hard choices. Fixing a road might mean less money for new pipes. Building a clinic could mean waiting another year to upgrade alarms. These are real problems, and there's no easy answer. And even with the best planning, nature has a way of surprising us. Maybe a storm is bigger than expected, or an earthquake shakes things up. Maybe a new family moves in, not knowing the history. The truth is, nobody can promise total safety. All anyone can do is try to make things a little better, one step at a time. Think about the people who live near these lakes today. They wake up, make breakfast, go to work, and play with their kids. They hear stories about what happened in the past, but most days life goes on like anywhere else. There's a quiet strength in that. It's not about ignoring danger, but about refusing to let it steal every good moment. There's something universal here too. Every place has its own risks. Some people worry about storms, others about fires, still others about disease. The details are different, but the feeling is the same. The world is never completely safe. But that doesn't mean we stop living or stop caring. In fact, it's the opposite. The knowledge that things can change in a moment makes the present feel more precious. And here's a little perspective. For every silent lake, for every hidden danger, there are also quiet acts of bravery. People who check pipes in the rain, kids who learn new safety rules, leaders who make tough calls to protect their neighbours. These stories don't usually make the news. They're slow, steady, and often invisible, but they're what keeps the world moving forward. If you're ever by a quiet lake at night, you might feel the weight of all this. The water is still, the stars are above, somewhere. Below, layers of gas might be waiting. But above ground, people are laughing, cooking, telling stories and planning for tomorrow. Life continues. Risks are real, but so is the will to stay, to adapt, and to remember. Maybe that's the real lesson. Dangers come and go, but so does our ability to learn and adjust. We can't control everything. Sometimes the world surprises us in ways that are unfair or even cruel. But we can pay attention. We can learn from what's happened. We can build systems, teach each other, and keep trying, even when the threat is quiet. There's a kind of peace in that. Not the peace of perfect safety, but the peace that comes from doing your best with what you have. The lakes will always be there. So will the memories of what happened, and the hope that it won't happen again. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's what survival really looks like. Not beating every danger, but learning to live with it side by side. As you drift off, remember this. Most of the world's dangers are quiet, but so is courage. So is hope. And every new day brings another chance to watch, to learn, and to keep going.